Want to master anime character design for free? This course is your first step on the journey to anime character design art learning pathway. Brushcamp offers tons of similar courses in illustration, 2D, 3D design. Level up your creativity with free knowledge and courses. Visit brushcamp.com today and explore endless possibilities.
Hello. In today's lesson, we will learn about brushes. This is the first tool that I want to introduce to you, because I am learning digital painting, which means I paint on the computer. To be able to paint, we need brushes. So let's explore brushes in Photoshop together. How are they different from real-life brushes? Okay. I will go over the operations for drawing on Photoshop. For example, if we press the spacebar, our cursor will turn into a hand. Then we can click and drag on our workspace like this. This allows us to move around our workspace. If we press the Z key, which means zoom, I press Z, and then I can zoom in and out by dragging. Hold the spacebar to drag. I drag and look, you see. Normal. Hold the spacebar to move. And hold the Z key to zoom in and out. Okay. Now let's start exploring brushes. The default brushes in Photoshop have general brushes. I will test the last brush, brush hard round pressure opacity. This brush, for example, like this, okay. Let's choose a slightly vibrant color. Okay. Remember that in Photoshop, whatever tool we select will appear. For example, if I select the brush tool like this, for example, I select this tool, it will show me what shortcut key this tool has, how to adjust it. For example, this is tool B for brush. This tool here. And this horizontal bar represents the default and basic parameters of the brush. It will have the brush type, the brush settings. What is its mode? It's set to normal. What about opacity? Opacity refers to the transparency of the brush. It means that a normal brush will be opaque like this, opacity 100%. But if I decrease the opacity to 50 or 42, when I brush with it, it will appear lighter like this. If I continue brushing, it will become darker. I have to brush 3 to 4 times for it to become as dark as this real color, because I have reduced its opacity. The same goes for flow. Flow means the flow of the brush. It means that if flow is set to 100, the brush strokes will be smoother. But if I decrease the flow to the minimum, then it will appear fainter. Look, flow 100. The ink will come out evenly. For example, if I quickly swipe a stroke, the ink will come out evenly. But if I set the flow to low, it's like swiping a stroke quickly. The ink won't keep up. You can see it's slightly blurry. That's about flow. It's somewhat similar to opacity, but this one is about the speed of your strokes. For example, with high flow, normally. But with low flow, if I swipe too quickly, the ink won't keep up. Okay. The final parameter is smoothing. Smoothing means the smoothness. Smoothness here is different from flow. It's more like a delay or slight lag in your strokes. For example, if I normally draw a curve with smoothing set to 0, when I draw quickly, the lines still feel. The curves still appear smooth. But if I draw slowly, the curves are prone to shaking. You can see they easily become shaky. Let me erase everything and create a new layer. It will be shaky. When I draw, it will be slightly shaky. But if I draw quickly and I'm used to it, it's fine. If I draw slowly, it will be shaky like this. That's when smoothing comes in handy. For example, if I increase the smoothing to around 50, then you can see my brush strokes will lag behind the brush itself. And then there's a slight delay. So my strokes will be smoother, rounder. The higher the value, the more delay there is. You can see it. And the more delay there is, the smoother the strokes. They are rounder and don't have jagged edges, even if I draw slowly. And if I draw quickly, it's still fine. It will be slightly in slow motion. My hand has stopped, but the brush stroke continues. I set the smoothing to around 10%, and it's good enough. Okay. That's about the brush. There's another parameter that beginners are often concerned about. That is, whether to use brush A, brush B, or brush C, or what type of brush to use. Everyone is like that. When you're new, you want to collect many brushes. But after a long time of drawing, you'll realize that you only need a few brushes. So the core issue here is knowing what you want to draw at that moment. That's what you need to know. I'll briefly explain. Not go into deep. That is knowing what you want to achieve with. Whether the brush has a hard edge or a soft edge. There are 3 types of edges: hard edge, soft edge, and lost edge. I consider lost edge as one type of soft edge. Hard edge is a different type. There are only hard and soft edges. You can have some examples here. When I'm sketching, I use hard brushes to create shapes quickly. Then I use soft brushes to blend them together. So what parameters does a brush have? I'd go to the brush settings panel here, or you can select this option. It's also the brush settings. I see it as a brush. I pay attention to some parameters. For example, the most common parameter is transfer. Transfer means it will be lighter at both ends and darker in the middle. If I turn it off, it will be consistently dark. When one enables transfer, it affects the pressure sensitivity. You can see the 2 ends are lighter. You can also observe the brush shape. Transfer is important, as you can guess. Smoothing is also important too. I need to click on this to use the settings here. If I turn it off, this option will be disabled too. It won't allow me to use it. Those are the 2 important ones. Of course, there are many others. For example, shape dynamics, scattering, texture, dual brush. I don't need to remember all of them. Now let me take a brush with texture. For example, this brush has some texture for me. It has a certain level of softness. When I click on its brush settings panel, it has color dynamics. Color dynamics means it changes colors. I pick one color, but when I draw, it produces multiple colors. It changes the parameters above. For example, the hue changes a lot. It produces different shades of blue, red, purple, and yellow. With less hue change, rotates more around the blue color. Saturation is the intensity, the brightness intensity, or brightness, the brightness level. I just need to tap a little on these to understand better. But they're not that important either. What's important is the transfer for soft brush edges and smoothing. Shape dynamics is the same. Okay, about transfer, I remember that if my brush, my drawing, if it's connected, has pressure. This CTRL section is for pen pressure, meaning it has pressure. Pay attention to that a bit. With the default brush in Photoshop, I really like one thing. When I right-click this default brush, it displays my parameter panel. It will have a brush's size, but I won't talk about it anymore. I can adjust it up or down, or my shortcut is these 2 brackets. The 2 keys near the enter button. I can press left or right to change it like this, or I can drag my hand over it. And there's an important parameter to show the hardness or softness. That parameter is called hardness. For example, with my brush, if I set the hardness to 100%, the edges will be hard like this. But if I decrease the hardness, for example, if I decrease it to around 50, just half, 50, my hardness, the edge becomes slightly blurred. But it's only a slight blur. If I set the hardness even lower, then it becomes even more blurred. For example, this soft brush. It's used for blending smoothly, while this hard brush, it's used to create solid blocks, or with a medium hardness, draw the transitional areas in between. It depends on how I decrease it. It's like I'm a chef. I decrease the ingredients, the salt and pepper, to achieve what I want. More hardness or less hardness, more softness or less softness. Okay, that's about my brush. There's also something I need to know. That is how to import any brush into Photoshop. For example, here I have a brush called Texture Brush. To import it, it's simple. I just need to click on it firmly, and it will automatically install for me. It's installed. Let me check down here at the bottom. This texture brush. It is. I just click on it and I can start drawing comfortably. For example, I don't like this brush. I go into its settings and try adding some other things. I'll add color dynamics and see how it changes. If it's not there, it's just a single color. But if I tick it, I increase its hue. It will show 7 rainbow colors, a lot of them. The more I increase it, the more it changes color. There are a lot of variations in it. It depends on what I'm working on. The same goes for saturation. The more brightness, the more it increases or decreases. I just have to do it, and then I will understand. That's how you import a brush. So now, how do I export it? I select the brush and click on this icon. These 3 horizontal lines. It has export selected brushes written on it. I just need to click here. It will export it for me. Export something for me. For example, if it's on the desktop, export it as ABC. Save. If I go outside, there will be an ABC here. One ABC brush, and then I can take this brush somewhere else. Okay, that's the part about importing and exporting brushes. How do I delete brushes? Delete it. But how do I delete it? What do I click on? Then I also click on the 3 horizontal lines. There is a delete brush option. Delete it. Let it go. I select here so that I can click delete in the trash can right away. That's the delete group and the brushes inside it. Okay, delete it. That's how I delete or add brushes. I can also rename them. I can freely change the names. Just change the name as usual. By renaming it here, there's a rename option too, here. Okay, those are the things I want you to grasp in this lesson on tools. For example, the first tool is the brush. We've talked about the brush for drawing, so we also talk about eraser. That's the eraser. The eraser is here, the key. The eraser can also erase. I'll use different brushes to swipe on it. I'll erase it. Remember that there are some brushes with a brush icon in front, indicating that those brushes are only for drawing. They can't be erased. If I use the eraser on that brush, it won't work for erasing because it already has this brush in front, or it has this finger touch here. It's the Smart tool down here. Pay attention to some notes here. For example, if I press the key, I become an eraser. Then there's a button to quickly change my brush. Now I have my brush here. Choose a different brush for a change. Choose this brush. It looks like this. I'm drawing like this. I want to quickly switch to the eraser. Just hold the key, remember to hold it and not release it. Then it becomes an eraser. And when I release the key, it goes back to my brush. Then I can quickly switch between the eraser and the brush. Hold the key to erase, release the key to continue drawing. And there's an interesting key in Photoshop. That is the grave accent key. Located right next to the number 1 key, on the left side of the keyboard. The key on the left edge on the left side, it's below the SC key. When I'm drawing with a brush, I hold that key. My brush automatically turns into an eraser. It switches from a brush to an eraser, and when I release that key, it goes back to being a brush. This is the brush. And I also hold the grave accent key below the SC key. It's near the number 1 key on the left side. Then it becomes an eraser like this. It's quite convenient. Okay, very convenient for drawing. I also hold the grave accent key. You see I'm holding it below. It appears continuously, so I erase it. This helps me create brush strokes. For example, I create this brush stroke because brushes in Photoshop are sometimes too smooth. So when I draw and erase it, It creates natural brush strokes, that's for sure. For example, like this. If I want, I can pick a color. Hold the Alt key when inside the brush to pick a color. Then I just fill it in. But when I fill it in, I'm not satisfied. I'll hold it. I use an eraser to remove some parts. I shave off a bit. It creates a solid piece for me. The drawing principle is that simple. I create something, and if I don't like it, I shave it off. Like this. It will create solid shapes. For you to participate in drawing. Like this solid version. Okay. These are the things I want you to understand in this brush lesson. First is to understand hard edges and soft edges, to choose the appropriate brush. Thank you for watching. See you in the next videos. Bye bye.
Please like and subscribe to our channel.